If I were a parent of a school going kid, this is what I would do. This is not medical advice. If I was in United States and the kid was more than 5 years old, I would vaccinate and send the child to school. There's a chance that the kid can pick it up in school and bring it home, but that chance, that risk is less than what would happen if the kids don't go to school. If the kid was kindergarten, less than 5 years old, they are not protected due to the vaccine, but their chance of getting COVID or spreading it or getting sick from it is proportionally lower compared to the older kids. So I would send them to school too. Not a medical advice. If I was a parent in India and if the kid was more than 15 years old, I would vaccinate and send. If the kid was more less than 15, I would blame myself for the accident of geography, for being stuck in a place where it is unconscionable that the schools were to open on December 1st and no decision was taken regarding the vaccine, leaving a large swath of population, almost 25% of the population below 18, vulnerable. Be that as it may, during the second wave of Delta in May 2021, many kids got some natural disease. And during this Omicron, I won't call it the wave, Omicron cases, other kids have gotten natural immunity too. So there is some natural protection. And there are two parts, the kid catching COVID and kids bringing it home. You really don't need the kids to bring it home. You're getting it from many other sources. It's I think Omicron has made the decision making actually easier. So I would just take the risk, send the kids to school, because again, the chance is higher that there will be more damage if the kids don't go to school. But I would do one more thing. Indian parents are supposed to be tiger moms and tiger dads. So I would continue to hammer your local representatives and your government to allow any parent who have kids under the age of 15 to purchase a vaccine of their choice from a vendor of their choice and administer it to their kids at the guidance of their doctors at their own cost. I think the government need to allow that. Means this is not like we don't stay in a communist country. So this should definitely be allowed, especially if parents want it. So I'm done with my major piece. Now I just want to ramble on about management of schools and some other things. You can listen on if you're interested. So why should a doctor talk about management? Means why not? Managers, politicians, actors are shooting their mouth on COVID. We can talk about management. The most important thing is whether schools should open. And we confuse because we try and litigate all the things all the time. Leonardo da Vinci used to say that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So one thing is really simple. The schools need to open. Means that's not negotiable. That's set in stone. That's in concrete. Once you decide that, then you figure out the other parts as to how it is done. So whether is out of the question. Why, we will see. How has to be figured out, and when is also answered. Whether, yes. Why, we will talk about. When, right now. How, let the school boards decide. Now why? There is definite studies that show that the emotional damage to kids but not being with each other will be way more than what potentially could happen because of COVID. And this pandemic of mental disease might last for 50 to 60 years. For a temporary protection of 1 year or so, we might be inviting a pandemic that will last for 50 years. There is a study from a World Health Organization. I don't like them too much, but there's another body, and that study came out today, and that was showing that there is no linkage between opening schools and COVID cases. Again, this may or may not be true. Previously, we used to do a null hypothesis and then do a study and either prove or disprove it. These days, unfortunately, people decide what they want to prove, set that down and then commission a study that proves exactly that. Means if you look at the divergence of first of the Greek philosophy, and then when the father of empiricism, Francis Bacon, came around, he said, let's just see what things are and then figure out based on that. So whether this study is true, it doesn't matter. Means it's obvious that the damage to kids will be long term. Kids need to be with each other. They need to scrape their knees. They get into fights, scuffle. They need to learn about life. I'll give you a very interesting example. Suppose my cousin, she is visiting Spain, and her husband, they go to a bullfight for whatever reason, and her husband suddenly is dropped into the bull ring, and there is a ferocious bull charging towards her husband, and she's standing near a holding pen where there is another bull, another ferocious bull. So let's just assume that my cousin likes her husband. How can she save him? You know, the answer is going to startle you. She will open the holding pen and release the other bull into the bull ring. You think two bulls will kill her husband? No. Soon as one ferocious bull sees the other bull, they both quieten down, and it will be very easy to manage them. There is this herd mentality. Kids do best when they are together with each other, and they learn. So this is just beyond question that the schools need to open, and they need to start. Now let's take a example which is slightly appropriate and slightly inappropriate. It's a historic example. Nazi Germany had captured Europe. Now their back had to be broken in Europe, no question about that. Because it was never a question whether to do it, it was the question when to do it. United States entered the war in December 1941. Before that, England with its empire couldn't do it. Nazi Germany was too strong. The United States didn't do it in 42. They didn't do it in 43. They did it in 44. So they wasted almost 18 months. And their logic at that time was they didn't know what was going on. Probably they were not ready. They were not strong enough. If they do it prematurely, there was a risk of permanent failure. But once they were ready in 1944, they just did it. They broke Nazi Germany's back in Normandy. Once it was decided it has to be done, they figured out the how to do it. But the problem with that was they could have probably done it 6 months earlier. And because they didn't do it, they didn't realize at that time that they not only had to beat Germany, but they had to beat Russia at beating Germany. So, had they done it earlier, it would have relieved the pressure on the Russians who were getting hammered on Germany's eastern front. But millions of people from Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, at that time it was Czechoslovakia, Hungary, all those people would not have been relegated to 40, 50 years, and East Germany, 40, 50 years under the Iron Curtain of communist rule. All those people could have been free. They could have been saved earlier if this decision was taken. So not only you have to do the right thing, you have to know the right time to do it. Now, let's start off by saying that my parents are both teachers, and I have enormous respect for that profession. Now that I've got the respect out of the way, let me say something about the teachers union. I don't think this applies so much to India. It probably applies more to United States and some eastern states. Never in the annals of human history had one profession launched such an energetic, effective, and efficient campaign to prove that they are not an essential work. Means I just don't get it. Like the more you give to the teachers unions, the more they want. Means I understand they want to be safe, but there are other professions. The doctors and the healthcare workers never said that we are not safe, so we are not going to keep the emergency rooms open. Teaching is just as important. Now let's take a look at how to open. What are some mitigating strategies? That's up to the entire school. entirely up to the school district as to how to keep it open. But when we are keeping the schools closed, we have to remember that it impacts different people differently. Means we pay such a lip service to like the diversity and this and that, but like Leo Tolstoy said in the first line of his book Anna Karenina, that all happy families resemble each other, but all unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. Means looking at United States, not to assume that the communities of color will be hardest hit by the remote learning. It, that is just true. Looking at India, the poor families are going to be affected adversely for sure. They don't have such stable internet connection. They may not have laptops. They may not have the same. Kids may not get meals unless they go to school. They need this social interaction. Otherwise, somebody will put them to work. Means they just need to be in. They just need to be in school. So let's look at some other strategies of how to open. As we said, it's up to the school district. They have to make the decisions for staffing as to who can drive the bus if somebody falls sick, how to do the mitigation, masks, which are fine. I think Omicron has made life easier for everybody because we know Omicron cannot be stopped. It's going to spread. Now the kids are not wearing masks during lunchtime. So, so if the virus had to spread, it can spread during the lunchtime. But I guess the mask will offer protection. It's fine to wear them. The this glass barriers, I don't know whether they help that much. In fact, they might trap the air and make things worse. Try and do it in open air or keeping the windows open if the weather permits. It's great. If the school has the HVAC system, putting the HEPA filters to try and freshen air every 15 minutes is absolutely worthwhile. Now I'm going to say something very interesting and controversial. Again, it's not a medical advice, but I think the testing strategy is wrong. Means what exactly are we achieving by doing this multitude of testing and lining people outside the school? What is the current quarantine recommendation of CDC? If you come in contact with a COVID patient and if you are vaccinated, they say 3 vaccines, but let's assume if you are vaccinated, then you don't quarantine, you just mask. So let's just assume if a kid falls sick and you test, the kid has given COVID to other people 2 days prior to getting sick. So, what are you going to do? So, my idea is simple and it's pretty controversial. My idea is only test the kids who are symptomatic. And actually, if the kid is symptomatic, tell them not to go to school. Just just trust each other and do that. And if we do that and not focus too much on testing, but focus on who's symptomatic, because now the chance of kid giving it to parents or kids spreading it to their grandparents is not that high because of Omicron. There are multiple opportunities for the parents and grandparents to get it from anywhere. So teaching is essential. Kids are our future. This testing strategy need to go when a day of judgment finally comes, and when these decision makers will be judged, the the powers to be will say that you were tested and you were found wanting. This lack of decision making is not good. I don't think the school open strategy should be based on testing at all. It should be based on symptoms. But be that as it may, I think the schools need to reopen and the schools need to stay open no matter what. If I were a parent, I would take the risk of sending the child to school, because the risk of sending the not sending the kid to school is more. Partially, Why the Indian government should allow at-risk vaccination for kids under 15 is not so much for the kids who have low risk, but to reduce the anxiety of the parents who are very worried about their kids and not sending them to school. Sorry for such a long and rambling video, Dr. Ravi Godse.